guess everyone knows everyone. We don't need to do any introductions tonight. Maybe for the camera, though, we should know this, but Tasha Ross is our financial manager, bookkeeper, Superintendent Randy Anderson, the three administrators, Erin Hiltz, elementary middle school principal, Melissa Margraf, pupil services, and Troy Schaefer, high school middle school principal. Kaylee Sinclair is here taking minutes, and we have school board members Dick Weidman, Jeff Isaacson, Sue today, and myself here, along with community member Linda Wade. So at this time I would take a motion to elect a chairperson for the meeting.
I nominate Linda Wade as chairperson of the annual meeting.
Second. Okay, there's a motion and a second nominating Linda Wade as chairperson of the annual meeting. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Linda.
Thank you for those votes of confidence. All right, so we have the minutes, the previous minutes from October 24th of 2023.
You're on pages 7 and 8 of your book.
All right, thank you, Tasha. And if everybody's had a chance to review those, I would look for a motion to approve those minutes and place on file.
I would move to approve the minutes of October 24, 2023 as presented.
And
Second.
Second was by, who's second?
Oh.
Lisa. All right, and if there's no other questions or discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion carried. Thank you. All right, and then we have the presentation of the 2024-2025 Sevastopol school budget by our finance director. And I'm just going to scoot over to the side here so I can
Absolutely.
what's up.
That's very well.
Sounds great back here.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tasha Ross. I am the finance director for the school district of Sevastopol. And tonight I will be presenting our 2024-2025 annual budget. Okay, when we're talking about the school district's budget, the school district's budget is determined by a couple of different key elements. First of all, we have the revenue limits. State statute caps the resources that we have available as a district. In 24-2025, that amount is $11,666.82 per pupil. These limits are based on the rolling 3-year average of the number of resident students. School districts also typically receive equalization aid. This aid is defined by the student numbers, our property value, and shared costs. Because Sevastopol has high property values and high shared costs, the district receives very minimal equalization aid. In fact, in 2024-2025, we are budgeted to receive about $3,000 in equalization aid. And that equalization aid will decrease by 15% every year until we are below their formula limits, and then we will receive none. Finally, we're looking and watching at the state biennial budget. The state biennial budget has set a per pupil amount of an increase of $325 per pupil per year. With other required revenue limit deductions, including voucher school deductions, the change of $325 translated into about $50,000 in additional tax revenue to the district, available to the district for 2024-2025. Next up, we have the budget timeline. As you can see from the budget timeline, there are months of effort from employees across the organization that go into the development of the annual budget. There are revisions and discussions that take place throughout the entire process. In addition, we're often looking several years ahead when it comes to key pieces of the budget and to those large purchases. When we're looking at the 2024-2025 budget, there are a few things we really want to highlight. First of all, our total tax levy is remaining flat at about $12.1 million for the third consecutive year. Second, in order to keep the tax levy flat, the district is using existing fund balance to offset cost increases. The fund balance is expected to decrease from 39% to about 25%, and the district will have to short-term borrow to meet cash flow obligations. Our general fund expenditures are increasing about $680,000. The increases are generally in staffing costs, district insurance, and transfers to other funds. Our special education costs are increasing related to staffing and transportation. In the debt service fund, the district is planning to defease additional debt. Debt defeasance means that we pay off debt before it is due in order to reduce future year's tax levy and to save on interest costs. Finally, our food services expenditures are budgeted to increase about 13%. This is related to a couple of key capital replacement purchases. There have been several challenges in bringing this budget together. First of all is staffing costs. Staffing costs and benefit costs continue to increase. In addition, we find it more and more difficult to fill these positions, whether that be teachers, bus drivers, custodial staff, food services, or any other personnel within the district. The district has also had to contend with an insurance increase with our health insurance. Our insurance increase was 9% this year, and even with plan changes will be 18.9% next year. There are some deferred maintenance items that the district now is looking to repair or make a plan to repair. Although we built a new school, or a portion of the new school for the elementary side and for some of our high school students, there is still a significant older portion of the school that still needs maintenance. We have roof repairs, outbuilding repairs, parking lot sealing, and HVAC maintenance that needs to be completed. Our Buildings and Grounds Committee has been reviewing these needs and is currently creating a comprehensive plan. Our ESSER funds that were provided after COVID have been exhausted. The district received about $490,000 in ESSER funds over the course of 3 years. Those funds were meant to help offset the cost of reopening, mental health, and learning loss. Last year, the district took in about $217,000 in ESSER funding. So the district now has to absorb some of those costs. Administrative turnover. Although the district was able to fill our administrative turnover in the district office, that turnover in staff creates a challenge because we lose institutional knowledge, we interrupt the process, and we create some inconsistencies in our process. It can also be said that that turnover allows fresh eyes to look at what's going on and can also help our budget process. Finally, our revenue limits and our referendum requirements were a challenge. The revenue under the cap funds only about half of our budget. The district is still operating under the last referendum at $2 million. So we're going to look at some of the details that support our funding. This graph shows our enrollment data. In this graph, you can see that the total head count versus the DPI data. The head count is that gold line that continues to, it bops around, but it's generally increasing. And the red line is our DPI enrollment number, which has marginally decreased. The difference between those two lines is typically our open enrollment students. Sevastopol takes in, or brings in many more open enrolled students than open enroll out of the district. Our per pupil count drives our revenue limit. In the graph above, the red area is our revenue limit from 2011 to current, adjusted for inflation. So we can see that the line that is our actual revenue limit is not keeping up with inflationary numbers. If our revenue limits had kept up with inflation, the current per pupil revenue limit would be $14,615. We're about $3,000 shy of that per student. When we are looking at general fund revenues, we can see that our taxes make up the bulk of our revenues. We receive some state and federal funding, specifically for programming and grants, and we receive open enrollment funding from other districts. I want to point out a couple of changes in general fund revenue from the budget that was published in the newspaper. This is very typical for what happens in a school district, and we're still refining things and getting final numbers in October. With the final revenue limit calculation, the taxes allocated to the general fund increased about $28,000. In addition, state and categorical aids changed slightly and increased about $40,000. And our per pupil aid rose approximately $10,000, and we will also be receiving personal property aid payments as a result of Act 12. The total revenue increased for the general fund about $69,000. That then lowers the total revenue in the debt service fund. Those two offset. The bulk of our general fund expenditures, as you can see, go toward instructional services. Non-instructional services on the graph are made up of our administrative staff, counseling services, physical and occupational therapy, technology, busing, and operational costs. Non-program costs, the smaller portion of the pie here, are our transfers to special education and food services, our open enrollment expenses, our voucher expenses, and a couple of other minor items. Again, I'd like to point out a change from our published budget. On 10/15, we received the amount owed for voucher schools. We estimated that the amount would be about $25,000. The amount that the state tells us that we owe for voucher schools is $53,679. That has been adjusted in the final version of the budget that is in your packets. Total general fund expenditures are budgeted to be over about $875,000 more than last year. The bulk of that cost, $360,000, is in instructional services. Support services are up about $195,000, and this includes our increase in voucher program support, insurance, and other various staffing and operational costs. And our non-program costs have increased about $320,000. That's mostly related to open enrollment expense. Our special education revenue is generally comprised of the transfer from our general fund and then our state and federal categorical aids. Revenues are up about 19% because costs are up about 15%, and those two have to offset. Special education programming isn't possible without our staff. Our staffing costs make up the majority of our expenses. The non-program costs are related to tuition costs for students that attend other learning centers generally. This graph depicts our debt service expenses for this budget year and our future budget years. The brown in the graph, I'm going to move in front here. The brown in this graph is our debt defeasance. This debt defeasance will reduce the red going out in future years. Finally, in our food services, our Fund 50 is funded generally by transfers, then charges for food, and federal aid for health and nutrition. Our food services fund applied for and received a grant aimed at increasing healthy choices for breakfast. That grant amount is about $16,000 split over 2 years. Expenditures are generally related to staffing costs, food supplies, and capital items. Finally, in this table, I've broken down the levy. Again, the levy is being held at $12.1 million. The district's mill rate will decrease from $5.06 per thousand to $4.46 per thousand. In this, I have broken down our mill rate by use. The bulk of our mill rate is going towards Fund 10, towards education and our students' needs. About $1.40 of that is going towards our debt service and debt defeasance. And then we have a small portion going towards our community services fund. In this graph, you can see the tax levy over a number of years. As you can see, our levy has flattened out in later years. In this graph, you can see the mill rate. The mill rate is the red line. You can see that that continues to drop. And the graphed area behind it is our equalization value. As you can see, the school district does not benefit from an increase in equalized value. Our revenue is derived from our student count. Just for a little color and clarity, the average mill rate in Wisconsin for K-12 districts 2 years ago was $7.70. As a reminder, we're looking at $4.46. In the end, this budget is designed around the district's mission, which is to pioneer the next generation with a focus on high academic standards, character growth, and social emotional skill development. As Sevastopol, we want to keep our high-quality staff, keep our programming, and continue to build our community through educating our children and equipping them with the skills they need to succeed. We believe that this budget fulfills those goals. Thank you. I'll entertain any questions.
Yeah, could you please go back? It was about 6 or 7 slides where you had the debt defeasance and that over the years. Okay, that slide there.
Yes.
So the brown is what you're going to pay over and above
So
the actual scheduled payment.
yes, the brown is, so the brown in the first column, the 2024-2025 brown amount is actually already has already been taken into account on those future years. The brown in the second column, that's budgeted future, we're levying for that this year. We don't know how we're going to structure that going out. We could take that debt off the end and reduce the timeline, which would save interest. We can also reduce the debt throughout the middle and reduce the tax levy.
Is that based on a 20-year or 10-year?
It was based on a 20-year debt, 20-year note. Should have expired in 2039 or matured in 2039. So the district has already paid off several years of that debt early. By defeasing debt, the district has saved about $2.7 million in interest. Any more questions?
Well, there's always an argument about, okay, so we spread the debt over 10 years and catch those people in the 10-year period, whereas if we spread it over 20 years, spread out a little more and don't get such a hit on saving. Neither here nor there. And saving interest on one hand, higher tax bill on the other.
Okay. Any other questions about the budget? Okay.
Are we going to have another PowerPoint? Okay, then I'll just stay right here. So we don't need any motion or anything to accept that, correct? That was just for informational purposes. All right, and we're not to the resolution yet, are we?
Yep, that's next.
Okay, what about?
They're going to be at the end.
Okay. All right, so resolution number 2425007, setting the tax levy.
You go right ahead, I'll be back here.
Okay. And we have it printed out there for you on the agenda, be it resolved by the annual meeting to accept the tax levy. And I believe we need to spell that out among general fund, chargebacks, capital expansion, and community services, correct? We need to spell it out for each item, like we did last year.
We have done that in the past. I don't know if that's a state requirement.
I've not heard of that as a requirement, so.
I'm just looking at last year's minutes where we did spell it out. So if we don't need to spell it out, I'm fine.
I trust that the superintendent and the financial manager probably looked into the organization of the meeting to make sure that we were legal.
Okay, the letter of the law. Okay, so we have the
We have it.
resolution
I was gonna
submitted
say-
and recommended by the board.
You have the separated out, it's not going to hurt to
Yes,
separate.
it's on the back page.
Yep, to separate out the amounts.
What page is it on, Tasha?
It was on page 14 of your packet.
That's the separation that I'm talking about. All right, I guess we're looking for a motion to approve that resolution setting the tax levy.
So be it resolved by the annual meeting of the Sevastopol School District, Sevastopol, Wisconsin, held on October 22nd of 2024, that there be a levy on all taxable property of the district a direct tax bill of $12,113,196 for the purpose of operation and maintaining the public school for the 24-25 school year. That operating levy, Tasha, will you?
Yes, you can finish that. $8,309,740 will be levied to the general fund. $3,783,455 will be levied for the debt service fund. And $20,000 will be levied for the community service fund, totaling $12,113,196.
Thank you. So, based on that, does somebody want to make a motion?
Move to approve resolution 2425007 to set the tax levy as stated.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion by Mr. Whiteman and a second by Ms. Beery for that resolution, tax levy of $12,113,196. Any further discussion or question?
Yep, I had a question. It was read as, the general fund was read as $8,309,740.
$741.
I think you said 740.
That is something, okay.
All right, so with that clarification, any other questions, discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none, all right. That is carried, thank you. Moving on to our next resolution, which is regarding the school board salaries. It appears that board members to be paid at a rate of, the current rate is $270 per month with a $50 per diem plus mileage. And it looks like you are proposing the same for this current, or this next term.
I move that the salaries remain the same, no change.
So that board members be paid at the rate of,
$270 per month and $50 per diem for each meeting outside the district, to and from meetings and mileage, to and from meetings in accordance with federal qualifications.
so in motion? Looking for a motion?
I move that the school board salaries be set at $270 per month, $50 per day for each meeting outside the district, and mileage to and from meetings in accordance with federal qualifications.
All right, and a second?
Second.
Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Motion is carried. And the third resolution, setting the annual meeting for next year. Resolution number 2425009, subsequent annual meeting date and time, be resolved by the annual meeting of the Sevastopol School District, Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin, held on this date, October 22nd, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. That the school board is authorized to set the location and date and time for the next annual meeting with a proposed date of October 22nd, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. You might want to add p.m. in there.
I move that the annual meeting for 2025 be set for October 22nd, 2025 at 6:30 p.m., granting the school board authority to change that date if necessary.
Second?
Second.
Jerry? No further discussion or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carried. All right, state of the district, 2023-2024 academic progress report.
I'd like to introduce the administrative team, Mr. Hiltz, elementary principal, Mr. Schaefer, high school principal, and Mrs. Margraf, people services director. Thank you.
All right, this past summer, there was a team that met to work on coming up with a goal for the district. We talked about using the STAR testing, and I'll get into that in a minute, and the data that came from that testing, or will be coming from that testing, to inform our universal practices. We also had some supporting goals. Those included using some additional data that we will be getting from Ames Web, which is another testing tool. And the STAR testing, just a little bit of history. We started off with the lower elementary using STAR testing, and in spring, the middle school talked about adding it to what they were doing. They compared it, they piloted it, and compared it to the map testing that they had been doing. They decided that they liked the STAR testing better. At that point, it made sense for us to go with STAR testing as a district. That way we can compare apples to apples all the way through. We're not trying to switch tests along the way. Along with that, as I mentioned before, the Ames Web is a test that's designed for early literacy. And we used to use something called PALS. That was discontinued with Act 20. There were a number of different tools that were presented. Ames Web ended up being the one that they selected as a state, so that is what we are using. Along with that, Act 20 also required that our teachers, K4 through 3rd grade, get trained in the science of reading. And to that end, we are taking a course called Keys to Literacy. It's offered through CISA. Myself and our reading specialist took that this summer, and the rest of our staff is going to be doing that starting, we're starting it right now, and we'll be doing a lot of that work during our in-services. Although the state required that we only went up through 3rd grade, we thought it best that we also trained teachers in 4th grade through 5th grade. We also included our ELL teachers, special ed teachers, among others, with the thought that we may have some kids that end up slipping through the cracks. We have some students who might come from another district that hasn't had the background that we provide all of our students, and this gives our staff the background that they need to be working with those students who need interventions. A data team was brought together this summer. It looked at scores that we had, mainly with our report card, state report card, and dug into that a little bit more. to figure out what are some things that we can do to continue to improve the efforts that we're providing our students. With that, the high school, middle school team also attended some sessions at CISA recently, and the elementary is reviewing data regularly at monthly meetings. We also implemented and revised our ELA curriculum. The timing was really good. We were planning on revising that anyway, and Act 20 came out and said we need to have certain curriculum that would be approved. The one that we selected was one that was going to be approved and has been approved. At the lower level, we're using Benchmark, and then middle school, high school is using My Perspectives.
Some additional academic highlights to share with you this evening. As a bit of history, in 2022-23, the school district adopted a social emotional curriculum called Character Strong. This past year, we implemented Tier 2 of Character Strong, which are small group focused on social emotional learning for kids. How that ties into academics, a lot of those small groups, what their focus was on student organization skills, on-task behavior, peer relations, all of those things that do, all kids need to come to school feeling organized, ready to go, getting their work done, and also feeling that sense of belonging. That Tier 2, Character Strong, really had a chance to bring in kids of similar needs and work on those specific skills together, so which will enhance their academics and sense of well-being here at Sevastopol. In addition, talk a little bit about our AP test scores. We had 36 AP exams taken last year. They were literature, they were pre-calculus, calculus, AP bio, physics, in addition, so a bunch of AP exams, so 36 of them were taken by our students with an 81% passing rate. I think that's pretty phenomenal. Down here too a little bit, I want to kind of jump order here. Also last year we had AP Physics, AP Physics C and Chemistry also offered to our students. They were taken online though too, so we're ever trying to expand our offerings in AP for kids. As Mr. Hiltz mentioned too, we had a new ELA curriculum, My Perspectives for our middle school and our high school, and then Benchmark Advance. We selected that last year, completely aligns with Act 20, which was, again, just reiterating what Mr. Hilt said, perfect timing to make sure that the curriculum that we chose are meeting all of the state requirements for reading for our students. We continue to intentionally have professional development opportunities for the teaching staff to learn and to be able to implement new modifications for all students to learn. That's in-house professional development with some of our teachers, and that's also utilizing some of our local resources. Mr. Hiltz also mentioned our connection to CISA. We continue to build that capacity and bringing in the most important information for our teachers to be able to impart on our students so we can maximize their growth and potential. We also implemented the K-12 academic diagnostic to continually monitor student progress. I want to take a minute here. Historically at Sevastopol, we used the MAP test that really honed in on kids from 4K and then ended in 8th grade. We never had any diagnostic monitoring for our high school students. So this last year, we picked one, and this coming year, we're monitoring our students, all students, with one diagnostic, so everybody's talking a common language and can look at the same data in the same way to ensure that all of our students are growing. A bit about our ACT scores. The graduating class of 2024 had an average ACT score of 23.52. Our graduating class of 2025 had an average ACT score of 22.1. Of our 2024 class, a bit of where they went, right? We had 66% of our kids attending a four-year college, 25% of our kids attending a tech college, 7% are in the workforce, and 2% are in the military.
All right, some of our extracurricular highlights, starting first of all with our Destination Imagination teams. We had one high school team, 2 middle school teams, and an elementary team. The great thing about our Destination Imagination team last year, all 4 teams took first place in the sectionals. We had 3 teams that actually qualified for globals, and they ended up competing against 14 countries, 653 teams presented across the 6 different STEAM challenges. Our high school team, even though they were a little disappointed because they are used to being global champions, took second. Our middle school team, the Magics, took third, and our other middle school team, the Puppeteers, took 15th place. Forensics was really exciting since we had a lot of students join forensics for the first time. We had, from our forensics, we had 4 individual students go and qualify for the state qualifier, and then the other students performed as one whole group. So our complete Sevastopol forensics team were state qualifiers. Last year, esports were introduced to our school, and that is off and running this year. We currently have 12 members this fall that are participating, which is really exciting. We also started, it was kind of in the works early this year, is our Rotary Interact with our volunteer opportunities that is led by Mrs. Vanderhoof, and they have already done some things this school year, but are planning for a lot of volunteer opportunities and teaching our students the importance of our servant leadership and giving back to the community. Last year, our high school math team took 3rd place. Ezra Lenan had qualified 4th, or placed 4th in conference, while Luke Filer did qualified 5th in conference as seniors. Both Ezra and Logan received all conference awards. From the team, we had 15 individual medals earned, and students, when they are competing in our high school math team, they compete as individuals and also in teams of 8. Mrs. Liu is our high school math instructor. She has done a great job with our high school math team. Middle school math team, they were Door County Math Meet champions for 9 consecutive years in a row. We hosted the tournament here. In the individual award, we had 9 out of the 10 top students were all from Sevastopol. And something else that was really interesting about that is the top 3 teams from the Door County meet were all from Sevastopol. So we had 3 different teams represented. And then they went on to their regional meet where they took 3rd place, and the top 3 teams at the regional meet get to go on to state. So they were state qualifiers, and it was another great experience. We had some really exciting representation in our solo and ensemble state qualifiers. Caleb Johnson got to perform a classic vocal solo as well as a snare drum solo. Merrick Mann did his classical and musical theater vocal pieces. And then, of course, V-Dram was also a classical vocal solo. So we had 3 students represented. And extracurricular highlights continue on. Last year was really exciting. The Mighty Pioneers, Raybrook, and the town of Sevastopol worked with us to help install the brand new scoreboards on our baseball field and softball field. It was exciting. We also, in those meetings, created where we redid the high school baseball infield. We skinned the infield, got rid of the dirt bases, and turned it into a really sharp-looking field. Our girls cross-country team was very successful last year, finishing 1st in the Packerland Conference. Our girls swim team were 2023 main conference champions. The girls basketball team were co-Packerland Conference champions, which would make them conference champs for the 2nd year in a row. We had 7 players named to the Wisconsin Basketball Coaches Association All-Academic All-State team. Isaac Totoro advanced to the Gulf Sectional for boys. We have a Student Athlete Leadership Council. They meet every single, or not every single, they were meeting 2 Wednesdays out of the month. It was a leadership focus. It's been 3 years in running. Last year they had a huge focus on mindset as well as fan participation. They really worked hard. The students worked diligently at coming up with great chants to say at our sporting events, so we would be classy in our approach. They organized events that would recognize teachers, bus drivers, and maintenance staff. They also organized events for our fans at winter events, which would be the different competitions and opportunities to develop cheers that were positive in their intent. In softball, we had Libby Ash and Jolene Lidke were nominated to represent Sevastopol in the Softball Fast Pitch Coaches Association All-Star Game. And then, of course, we had many opportunities for sports teams to host. It was really exciting last year because we hosted against Southern Door, a wrestling match here at Sevastopol, which was really great. Track hosted 3 major events. Basketball, cross country had the Pioneer Invite and a very successful Packer Line Conference meet that was held at Cherry Hills. And then one exciting thing for our basketball teams, the boys and the girls both went down to Oshkosh to play in the arena down there. That was really exciting. And then of all of our accomplishments, we had, from all the sports combined, we had 7 first team all-conference awards, 14 second team all-conference, 9 honorable mentions, and 1 athlete was recognized as honorable mention all-state.
I'm going to keep the good stuff going.
Yeah,
So,
and don't
yeah,
stop.
Absolutely. So highlights from this past year. You know, it was the 100th anniversary. It was the event that kept going. It was absolutely spectacular. It was wonderful. There was so much hard work that went into celebrating this school and celebrating this community. You know, we started off with the kickoff event with some wonderful speeches right outside here, some tours within the building, and then everybody funneled out to the field where we served brats, and I can't even tell you how many root beer floats I made that day, kind of batting off some of the bees that were there as well. But it was wonderful. It was really, really wonderful to see so many people come out and celebrate Sevastopol School. We had the alumni forum where you could come in and listen to some of the amazing alumni here at Sevastopol, ask questions, learn from them. We had the book signing with Helga Bob as well. We have a special yearbook. Every student got a t-shirt. The school lunch night at the basketball game was a big hit, and then also the vintage wear night at the January game. Just want to acknowledge how much effort did go into these incredible events. Definitely a highlight to share. We also, every 4 years, we have the opportunity to host the Veterans Day event. Last year was our year. Again, wonderful. Tons of people came in, veterans and community members came into the school. We had a wonderful celebration, and then we had this room here just packed with community members to have a great lunch. So it was another wonderful event. The poverty simulation for staff that happened in December, again, real eye-opening experience for our staff to be able to go through an experience to understand the impact of poverty and how that really is not just in the family, but how that affects their education. And how we need to be more mindful of those students in those situations. We had the selection, the evaluation and the selection of ELA curriculum, which ties nicely into the second one, which was Act 20. Third time I'm going to say it, perfect timing for that to happen. Even the new reading guidelines for the state that come out. Right now we're living in Act 20 and how we're adjusting that and how we're addressing it with each of our individual students. But last year there was a lot of intentional effort that went into Act 20 being the future and how school districts need to make sure that they're prepared. So that's definitely a highlight because I feel like our team, under the direction of Mr. Hiltz and our reading specialist, really are understanding what it is that we need to impart on our students and teach our students for reading. The Color Run fundraiser for Destination Imagination and the National Honor Society was really fun, right? Way to mix it up and do something a little bit different. And I know this coming Saturday is the next run, I believe. So looking forward to all of the activities that our kids do to promote Sevastopol, but also to support other community organizations as well. We're about to start our Student Council Fund, our food drive with Mr. Kent, who leads that. Again, our community is generous, right? We're collecting and giving to those in need, which is really nice to see our students be able to give back. And then the last thing I want to say is last year was the beginning of some intentional professional development for the administrative team to get more of an understanding of school budget and finances. We're happy to say that we look forward to that this year to gain more of our knowledge about that so we can be fiscally responsible to the district and to our community. Yes, me too. Student achievement, we're going to jump into student achievement here. The report card, a lot of our achievement scores come from our required state assessments that happen in the spring. And just as a reminder for the community, where they are is we take the Wisconsin Forward exam, the dynamic learning maps, the pre-ACT, the ACT, and the access test there happens in December, and that's for all of our English language learners as well. So all of these tests help to create our achievement score.
And real quickly, I know we mentioned it a couple of times about the fortunate timing about our ELA curriculum. I think it's important to point out that the reason it was fortunate timing is that we're on a regular cycle of looking at our curriculum, and that curriculum just happened to be coming up at the same time that Act 20 came out. So we were very fortunate. And I also want to make sure that we mention Mrs. Debbie Hurst. She has done an outstanding job of making sure that we are working hard on Act 20 things, but also making sure that we implement the ELA curriculum. She is one of the chairs for that department. So, our state report card, this time last year, we weren't able to share with you the 2023 scores. So we have those up there now. The 2024 scores will be released in mid-November. Our scores continue to be high, very solid scores. But I think it's really important for us to make sure that we mention that the scores that are going to be released in about a month, that there were new norms that were used to come up with what those scores meant. Some of the reading that I've done about the subject is that COVID was a factor. If you remember, I presented a study from Stanford and Harvard that took a look at our scores, what they were before COVID, what they've been after COVID, to see how quickly districts have been able to close that gap. And we were very successful in what we've been able to do. Other districts across the state have not been as successful. And so it required some renorming to adjust for that. Almost like moving the finish line, if you will. We figured out how to do it, but some other districts have not. And so that was a factor in taking a look at that. I think I would also kind of compare that to either playing basketball on a court with a 10-foot hoop, and now the hoop has been moved down to 8 feet. You keep stats the same way, and you do all those other things the same way. You know, certainly outcomes are going to end up looking different when you move that basketball hoop. So. When you take a look at our scores compared to the state scores, there's some consistency to be able to measure it against the state scores. You can see that we have done very, very well in terms of achievement. Because of that change that I just described about the norms being moved, we are going to focus going forward on the STAR testing that we do internally. We have a lot more control over that, and those STAR tests are measured against national norms, which gives us some consistent information to work off of. So we will be kind of moving away from the report card scores as kind of a key factor in focusing more on those STAR tests. There are a couple of other organizations out there. U.S. News and World Report comes out with some scores comparing districts. Niche does that as well. School Digger is one, and I happen to use them because those rankings came out recently, so it's something that we're able to throw up and give us some real-time information. You can see that we are doing very, very well. As a district, when you compare us against 428 other districts that School Digger takes a look at, we're in the 94th percentile. So very strong scores across the board. We're also doing well in comparison to our neighbors. As you can see, we're up in the 94th percentile. The next two closest are in the 88th percentile.
Some other new highlights for our school. First of all, we have a strong focus this year on some ongoing professional development. We're really working hard to improve the rigor across all grade levels with our focus on achievement and, of course, growth with all of our students. but we have teachers participating in an assessment project currently right now with CISA 7. CISA 7 has come in and started working with our staff. We've also sent a team of 3 teachers down to Green Bay for some extensive training. Those 3 teachers will be helping with the professional development with our high school staff and middle school staff, which has led us to really tackle with PLC's, professional learning communities. This is something that's fairly new to Sevastopol. Our teachers have been great in embracing it. The PLCs have allowed us to really have authentic, real conversations with teachers about instructional practices, assessments, how they are planning their units, that their units are effectively planned, that they're using formative assessments, interim assessments, and using those formative assessments to guide their instruction, and also to make sure that they're hitting the targets, their success criteria targets, which would be your standards, your benchmarks for each content area. And the other thing I think that's really cool where this has evolved is we're having conversations with where our English teachers, our ELA teachers are working with our social studies teachers and other teachers like our Mr. Paul in tech and art and music, and figuring out how we can incorporate and improve writing skills into their curriculum as well. So there's this conversation that's happening, science and math pairing. So they're doing these deep dives into their unit plannings. They're really looking at their assessments. One thing that was really talked a lot about is depth of knowledge questions. So for example, when you take an assessment, if all the depth of knowledge questions or the questions on the assessment are just recall, like dates, names, that's a depth of knowledge 1. And we want to really make sure that when we're working with our students that we're keeping a nice balance there. So there's 4 levels to depth of knowledge questions. But we want to make sure that there's a balance. So when we're teaching content and skill, that students are able to not only recall, but also use application to their learning so they can display more critical thinking skills and display a more rigorous curriculum where a lot more thinking is involved. This new goal with our staff collaboration and the main focus is that our instruction is meaningful and purposeful, and that there are outcomes and a focused outcome based off of great collaboration and conversation, supporting of one another, taking a look at what we're currently doing and how we can improve that, with a high emphasis on continuing. As you saw, we have great student achievement, but continuing that student achievement at a higher level and improving student growth. At the elementary, Mr. Hiltz talked quite a lot about the Act 20 requirements for our elementary staff to focus on progress monitoring, and identify various literacy intervention needs. Also at the lower elementary, using Ames Web, which is basically a literacy screener to help identify students who may need some intervention support. We're very proud of the 4 qualified staff that we hired at Sevastopol. We feel really blessed with them, that they have fit in really nicely. They're working extremely hard and they are making significant contributions to our school. We had very successful holiday concerts at the elementary level, along with the senior citizen concert and lunch. We also had our middle school, high school, winter and spring concert by our band and choir, which was excellent, as it is every year. Under the direction of Ms. Tanya Hassenegger and Betsy Miller. We also talked about the Veterans Day. We had an increased participation once again in our robotics led by Mr. Phillips. He's really passionate about that and offering our students a great opportunity for growth. And once again, Fine Arts Night was a tremendous success. Our NHS, they ran a pancake dinner that was extremely successful. And also one cool thing that the NHS did this last year, I thought it was really neat. At our celebration, each person who was nominated through the National Honor Society had to pick a mentor, somebody other than their parent that they look up to. They wrote that person a letter. It was framed. That letter was read. That person they nominated was at the banquet, and they presented it. It was a really cool experience. There were tears, there was laughter, there was just a great appreciation, and it really taken our NHS to another level. And it was an awesome celebration. We also, at our fine arts, we had our music department, tech departments, forensics, destination, imagination. We're doing activities. We had probably the most amazing art display from our K-12. Our elementary students had multiple pieces as well as our middle school and high school students. It was an incredibly successful day and or night, and a great moment for the community because we had unbelievable community outpouring for that and support, and the amount of compliments and the amount of people who appreciated getting to see all the different arts that we offer at Sevastopol. And not just that we're offering them, but they're at a very high level. All the way through from the art to the music to our tech and forensics, everything, DI, everything is at such a high level. And that's the constant compliment from people who come in. It's like, man, the level of how you do things here, it's incredible. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You mentioned Act 20 several times. I'm not familiar with it, but was an act by our legislatures, I assume, to add standards and requirements for school districts. Did that have a financial impact on school districts as well?
It does have a
In
financial
complying
impact,
with those?
yes. Act 20 is around the area of literacy, making sure that all students are able to read proficiently by third grade. And so there are steps along the way that students will need to meet to make sure that they're on track. Otherwise, plans will need to be put in place. There are some requirements like the coursework that I had described, and the state did not provide funding to help us cover those costs.
Thank you. Going on to agenda item number 9, is there any other business pertinent to our annual meeting that somebody wants to ask or discuss? Okay. All right. So then I guess we're looking for a motion to adjourn our annual meeting.
I will get we adjourn.
Second.
All right. No further discussion. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.